Well, I'm with Lars Larsson, who's the CEO at Varnish Software, and we're talking about content delivery on 5G networks. So good to see you, Lars.
Good to see you, Jan.
I mean, we know that 5G will revolutionize communications in the long run, whether it's sort of driverless cars or smarter automated factories. But in the near term, how do you think telcos will monetize their investments in 5G networks?
So 5G is a long journey. The specifications for 5G or 3GPP standard is evolving over time. So we will see the use cases that we see initially are going to be, or to those use cases, we will see additional future use cases as the standard develops. But the first use case is, use cases we will see is all about enhanced mobile broadband. Basically, taking advantage of the fact that a 5G network is probably 10 to 50 times faster than a 4G LTE network. And that is obviously something that can be used to transfer a lot of data from a source to a mobile phone. And that's where we're going to see the first use cases. And the obvious use case there is video, of course.
Yes, I mean, is video, will that be the sort of dominant subset of enhanced mobile then? And is it video that will actually, convince consumers to buy the new phones and pay for new data plans?
Yeah, I think that will seriously help the telcos to increase conversion over to 5G because the video experience that you can have on the 5G network will be very different from what you currently can have on 4G LTE. Not only for video on demand and the fact that you can stream in high quality, but especially if we're talking about live events, we will be able to stream 4K or 8K. We will be able to see streaming services that has multiple screens, so you can select your favorite player, or you can have a 360 view of the stadium. You can have a co-viewing view with your friends, etc., etc. So I think the streaming experience will be different, and that's why we as consumers are going to convert to 5G faster than we would have done otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there's a surprising amount of interest in linear and live on mobile now, and linear in streaming generally. When people talked about VOD a lot in the beginning, many more linear channels now. I mean, do you? You're worried that 5G networks might not cope with all the sort of the demands placed upon them, but particularly if sort of telcos don't sort of undertake a generational upgrade in their CDN approach. I mean, what is the problem with CDNs as you see it today?
There's not really a problem with CDN. And I think CDN operators, if we call them that, they're doing a great job and have been doing a great job for a very long time, trying to fix all the problems at the internet. But with 5G, if you're going to utilize all these characteristics of 5G with the high bandwidth and low latency and also the capacity to deliver much more data, you have to get the content inside of the network. And that's the key. And that's also an opportunity, I think, for telcos to bring their content into the 5G networks themselves and provide a completely different experience to their mobile users and their customers.
And how do they do that? I mean, does that involve building their own CDN, for example?
Yes, that's what we think that we can see. I mean, there are two opportunities. First of all, to be able to offer these services inside of the network, and secondly, also to monetize, because putting a traditional CDN outside the 5G network and then bring the traffic in, that will not improve the overall performance a lot. In addition, if you do that, you still have to deal with the latency that we have on the internet today, and that would also prevent the possibility for new innovative services where you can benefit from the super low latency that you can have. You can have much more interaction than you can if you would do this on the old internet with traditional CDN vendors. So there's a lot of opportunities, not only for monetization, but also for innovation for telco operators with a 5G network.
And does this also involve moving the CDN edge closer to users? I mean,
yes, absolutely. So if we look at some of the or generic CDN architecture, it's very different from 4G. So when you look at a 5G rollout, you usually have what is sometimes referred to as edge data centers, where you actually have a virtualized platform. There you have the radio access network, et cetera, et cetera. And to that data center, you have connected all your 5G antennas. So that brings the edge very, very close to the actual user. And since you have this virtualized platform, virtualized servers there, building a CDN inside of those data centers is not very complicated, because it's all based on existing web scale technologies.
Yeah. So how close could it go physically? I mean, where will we see these edges?
So it will depend on the setup and where these data centers are. In big cities, in metropolitan areas, we will have smaller data centers, but in a lot of different places. Whereas in remote areas, they will be put wherever it makes sense. But I think also we will see hybrid versions where we have potentially remote 5G antennas with a small data center in the actual tower, because it's all software. So you can, depending on your geographical challenge, you can build these edges wherever you want to.
So we can take the CDN edge literally right down to the tower for 5G.
If that use case makes sense, that's how I expect telcos to do it, yes.
Yeah. And is this sort of decentralization, or at least pushing things to the edge, is that how we enable the low latency that will be needed for a lot of 5G applications, or not just video, actually?
No, absolutely. I mean, getting as close to the antennas as ever possible, that's also the key. But when super low latency or ultra reliable low latency communication, I think that's the formal sort of expression. That's not really supported in the current 5G specification. So anything that will enable big rollout of autonomous cars, etc., that's not, the specification is not ready to support that yet. So that will come. But even with a latency of millisecond or sub-millisecond for video, that will be enough to have interactive TV and interactive sessions going on to add to the user experience. So from my point of view, that's enough today.
Okay, and I know it will almost certainly depend on the network configuration, but on average, will we see more points of presence if we become more localized?
Yes, it will be different in different kind of 5G architectures, but I think one of the things that is common for most 5G implementations is that you want to make them as energy efficient as possible. So that, and if you have a virtualized platform, you can actually spin up extra capacity where you need it and when you need it. So let's say that we have a big stadium that is usually empty. There's no need to have a POP running there with 50 virtual servers 24/7. But when you have a big event, that's when you need the capacity, and you fire that up and you use it, and then you turn it off. So I think the POP expression will be much more dynamic in the future, and it has to be, than we have today.
Okay, and how do we make the economics work? I mean, if we've got sort of more POPs, in some configurations, and they're closer to users, I presume that, can we still deal with all the processing and the sort of data economically?
I think that's the whole point of building a 5G network with a CDN like this, to be able to move resources around as you need them, to make sure that you can stream to as many as possible for as little as possible. I mean, we have not seen this yet. This is our assumption of what the future will look like, but I don't see it go any other way than that. You have to use your resources in a sensible way.
So the virtualization is an inherent part of the next generation CDN architecture for the 5G network.
Yeah, if you talk to all the vendors and everyone who's building this, everyone is talking about a virtualized platform. That's the starting point.
Yeah, I mean, are there any other benefits of virtualization beyond what we've already discussed?
I'm sure there are. I'm not a virtualization expert, but I think for vendors like Varnish Software, it's enough to be able to dynamically increase the resources as you go. And of course, I mean, that's the whole concept of the cloud, which are now taken into the 5G network. So there are several benefits, of course, depending on who you are and how you look at this.
Yeah, I mean, what other near-term revenue opportunities do you see for telcos once they've rolled out their radio networks for 5G?
I mean, video is one for sure, definitely. Gaming is also also something that will drive more consumers, of course, and also more revenue. But also anything that has to do with moving huge chunks of data. That's another revenue stream that is more and more important. Also for enterprise users and manufacturing industry, who are now, they have enormous amounts of data that they have to use in different applications, and using 5G to do that really makes sense, because it also drives down the cost of doing that, and the time it takes to move a big chunk of data from point A to B will be very different.
And by that, do you mean they become a kind of a content deliverer? So they're sort of offering a CDN as a service to other companies?
I think we will see not all telecom operators do that, but I think some of them will, because bringing in a CDN vendor and put them outside of the network, or even bring their technology inside of the network, means that they basically leave them a lot of money on the table. So I think we will see telecom operators do that, just as we have seen telecom operators investing more and more in content production and buying streaming companies and video streaming companies and media companies. If they already have their content, why wouldn't they build CDN inside of their 5G network to take it to the next level?
Okay.
So I'm sure that doesn't apply for everyone, but I'm sure that there are at least some big telecom operators who are going this way.
Okay, so they could obviously monetize the 5G indirectly through the various applications, including video, but then actually directly as well by sort of selling content delivery services, including presumably to content owners, if we're talking about video.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and I mean, if you're a telco but you don't want to really get into the CDN operations game, you know, how do you deal with that?
There are plenty of opportunities. Both we and other software vendors who are doing similar things can offer this as a fully managed service. So we could operate the software remotely for any telco, and I'm sure there are others who can do the same. So that's not a really complicated thing. It's just a matter of, is the CDN a core part of what we do? Then you manage it yourself. If you want to put it out to someone else, then us and others can do it for them.
Okay, and just to wrap up, is it fair to say that 5G represents an inflection point for content delivery? We just can't do content delivery the way we used to if we're talking about 5G.
I'm sure that we will say yes, or answer yes to that question in probably 3 to 4 years' time, because we are seeing big rollout of 5G networks in the US and in Asia. In Europe, we haven't seen so much, so it will take some time, but I'm convinced that once consumer have that 5G experience, they will not go back. So I think definitely there will be an inflection point for CDNs.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right. Well, it's a big subject with years and years ahead of us for that. So thank you very much, Lars, for coming in and telling us about that.
Pleasure. Thanks, John.
Thank you.